everyone, Six String Supplies. Today I'm going to do a video on, by popular demand it seems, how to do a four-way Telecaster. So we're going to be showing you how to wire the switch to controls and how to modify your neck pickup if it's required, and it more often than not is, to make it work. What does a four-way switch do? Basically, your four-way Telemod gives you the three switch positions of a classic telly that we all know and love, with the addition of a fourth switch position, which puts the pickups in series together. So normally your guitar is wired with the pickups in parallel. The fourth switch position puts them in series, which basically gives a fuller, fatter sound, a little bit like a humbucker. It's one way of describing it. So as always, we'll just give you a very quick overview of what we're using, the tools and the components. So this is our four-way Telecaster wiring kit. It's available on the website. Basically it's exactly the same as the three-way version of the kit, but you get the four-way switch instead. So we'll be showing you how to wire this up. You get your four switch positions there. You also get two solid shaft 250k CTS pots. Now these are actually new to us. These are the TVT, True Vintage Taper pots, made by from Crazy Parts in Germany. They're made by CTS obviously. I'm not just saying this, but because we're stocking them now, but these pots are absolutely superb. They've got a beautifully smooth taper, gives you really nice and rounded controls. And I wouldn't just say that because you know me well enough to know that for me, I've been using standard CTS pots for the last 2 years, and I love them anyway. I was forced to change due to an unforeseen price increase, shall we say. So that's the reason for that. You get some cloth wire. We'll give you a lot more than this in the wiring kit, but that's all I'm going to be needing today, one hopes. Black and yellow. Switchcraft jag socket, pretty industry standard, top of the range. A 0.047 orange drop capacitor, should we be putting that in? We're not going to be putting this in today, but this is a treble bleed capacitor, or the treble pass capacitor. You can have the option of having it or not with a wiring kit. We used to always include it, but now if you don't want it, you don't have to have it. Save yourself a bit of money there. So that's the wiring kit there. I'll just give you a standard overview as always. I've got the wiring diagram in front of me, which I don't need, to be honest. I've actually done quite a few of these now, but it's just the pickup when I'm showing you where to put that. I've got my lead-free silver solder there. Obviously, if you're working on your own projects at home, just use leaded tin lead 6040 alloy. You can get that on eBay, to be honest. Got my soldering station there. A couple of tools, wire clippers. Obviously, I've got a neck pickup, so I'm going to show you how to modify this if it's required. If your pickup's already got 3 wires coming out of it, then you don't need to. If it's just got the standard 2, then it will need a bit of work, so we'll do that. And that's about it really. I'm just going to wire the whole thing into a control plate, make it easier really. Okay, so I'll load up the components and then we'll start with the harness. Okay, so load your components into the control plate as you would. So you've got your switch obviously. It doesn't matter which way round you have it, but I've just got the plate there facing that way. This is your volume control, your tone control, and as always, if you watch any of our videos, you know that we always like to start with a bit of tinning. So keep your soldering iron tinned. Just give it a bit of a coating. Sorry, I should have done this before filming. Okay, so follow your wiring diagram and just go over, start tinning a few of all the terminals on your diagram that need a solder connection basically. So on your volume control, it's all 3. On your tone control, it's these 2. This one doesn't get used whatsoever. So if you're wondering how I'm doing this, I'm just holding my soldering iron just behind the terminal and flowing on the solder from the other side. bit like I'm drawing a circle, and that heat that's transferred is hot enough to melt the solder. There you go. Now in terms of the switch, I can try and hold it so you get a better view. There we go. I'm going to number these 1 to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so we're just going to start off by tinning a few of these. So you actually need to tin most of them. There's only 2 terminals that do not get tinned, which is number 1 and number 9. These do not get used. So just follow your diagram. Start tinning away. Try and turn that so you get a decent view. Again, same principle, hold your tip underneath and just flow on a tiny amount of solder. You don't want to fill the hole, you just want to give it a nice tippy woo. And on the other side. So on this side you tin all of them apart from this one. Tin it if you want, doesn't really matter, but it doesn't get used. And all tinning does is makes your final connection a lot easier. Okay. Now first thing you should do when you're wiring your, it doesn't matter if it's a 3-way or 4-way or a Les Paul or a Strat, this terminal of your volume control always gets grounded. Now we do have a separate video on our website which you can see, which shows you how to ground volume pots, but basically the quicker way of doing it is just to fill that terminal with solder. So the whole terminal is filled, there you go, you can just about see that. There we go, that's filled. Let it cool. And when it's sufficiently cool, bend it back. That's a bit hot. Bend it back onto the pot casing. And solder that in place. So I'm holding my soldering tip just behind and I'm flowing in the solder, and that heat makes it all flow quite nicely. There you go. So you should be able to see that on the camera there. That bridge of solder between the casing and the terminal is grounded. Right, so onto the switch now. Remember that these are labelled 1 to 10, numbered even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the first thing we're going to do is connect this terminal, or lug, this lug to this lug, so that's lug 4 to lug 10. Now you can either do it with just having a very short wire between the two, or I've got a habit of using cloth wire and bending it round and back up. No specific reason. I mean, if you've got a really shallow guitar body, you don't want wires going on top of the switch, just in case your body's too shallow and it's all a bit of a squish. So right, take your cloth wire, keep your tip tinned, which I failed to do. Excuse me, I balls that up. Right, there you go. So as you can see, that terminal is connected to this terminal. So with that done, next I'll just snip the ends off there, keep it tidy. So now the best way to think about it is to do this side of the switch first, which ends up being grounded to the pot casing, and then this side of the switch where my thumb is, which ends up going to the input of the volume. So we'll carry on using black for now, because it doesn't really matter obviously what colour you use, but generally people see black as ground and cream or yellow as the hot. So next, you're going to connect terminals 2 and 3 together, which is these two. We'll connect them together, and then 3, another wire running from 3, which will come out here and we'll ground that to the side of the pot. So we'll do these two first. And just before you solder that into terminal 3, you need to add the, oh come on, you need to add the wire going from terminal 3 that's going to run to the volume pot. So I'll show you that again. Terminal 2 is going to terminal 3, and then terminal 3 is going to be running to the pot casing here. Excuse me. Just snip the ends off, as always. Right. And the wire that's coming from terminal 3, you need to ground that to the pot casing, so I tend to do it on the side out of habit. You can do it on the top, of course, it really doesn't matter as long as it's grounded. So I'll snip that. Again, on our video, as I mentioned, there is a video on tinning, especially to the side or the back of CTS pots. If you are grounding something onto a CTS pot, make sure you tin it first. Just makes it a hell of a lot easier. It does take a bit more heat than normal for the solder to flow, so just keep your soldering iron on the side. Let it heat up for a bit, flow in some solder. Beautiful. There you go, little shiny puddle there. And then I can just tin your wire end. Same principle, just give it a light coating of solder. There you go. And then that gets grounded to the pot. And then if you've got a few pokies or a screwdriver or whatever, just hold that wire in place as you remove your soldering iron. There you go. Okay, so that's that side of the switch done. Pretty straightforward. And then we'll move on to the other side, which is actually exactly the same. It's repeated, but instead of grounding, you put it to the input terminal there. So I'll just do that quickly, not too quickly. So use your, it doesn't matter obviously, use whatever wire you want, but for the purpose of this video I'm going to use yellow. So it's exactly the same layout, to be honest. So these two terminals, which are 7 and 8 on your numbers, there we go, better view, these two, they get soldered together, and then another wire comes from 8, which then goes to the pot as well. So we'll do that. Just push that cloth back a bit. Right, connect that to terminal 8. Just push your cloth back. So like I said, it's exactly the same layout as the opposite side of the switch, but just before you put that one into place, you have another wire running from the same terminal. There you go. Give it a snip. There you go, and this wire, this yellow wire, is going to go all the way to your volume input control. Right, so on the controls, obviously this is your volume, this is your tone. So the yellow switch here that we haven't yet connected from your 4-way switch goes into the input terminal, input lug of your volume control, which is this one here. And then we have a wire running from that same terminal directly opposite to the tone control there. So we'll do that now. So I always put the wire into the tone control first, simply because when you're soldering that end into that terminal, I like to put them both in together at the same time. So let's just put that in and flow it. Give it a snip. And then the wire directly opposite, you put it into that terminal, and I've actually used a little bit too long wire there, but it doesn't matter. And the input from the switch gets connected into the same terminal, look. So, solder that in place. nice. Just push your cloth back down if you pulled it back a bit. Onto the capacitor. Now the capacitor, most capacitors in guitar wiring are not polarised. These ones certainly aren't, so it doesn't matter which way in you put it. So you have one end of the tone cap that's from the middle terminal of the tone capacitor, of the tone control, excuse me, and the other end of it gets grounded onto the pot casing. So one will do that. So I'm just going to snip that a bit there, get the correct length. I'm going to snip that. I'm also going to cover this in rubber tubing to stop it coming into contact with the ground. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. I'll just use some of the cloth wire and take the cloth off. Generally not a bad way of doing it. All good. Oh, excuse me. I just stopped knocking that. Right, so one lead of the capacitor goes into the middle lug of the tone control. Just hold that in place. Give it a snip. Yeah, so that yellow insulation is simply to stop this lead coming into contact with the ground. That would make it useless. And then the other lead gets grounded against the pot casing. So as always, if you're going onto the pot, let's put in a little puddle of solder underneath. Just to make it solder a lot easier. There you go. That's the main controls done. We're just going to do the jack quickly, and then we'll move on to how to mod your pickup and then how to connect your pickup, because there's obviously 3 wires. It's going to be a bit different. So we'll do the jack. It's the same old story every time. You've got 2 terminals. The one with the inner ring, so that's the one that's got Switchcraft engraved on it. That's the ground terminal, and the other one is your live, the output. So we'll put black onto ground and yellow onto this one. So same as always, just tin both of them lightly. It does make it a lot easier, to be fair, on a jack. So just put in a little bit of, give it a light coating of solder just around the terminal. There we go. So we'll do the black first. So put your wire in, twist it round, and solder that in place. If you wonder why I'm twisting it, and some people say don't, I was always told when it comes to soldering, you need to make a mechanical connection as well as an electrical connection. So you twist the wire around the terminal. If you know, especially on your pots and everything, if you know you're never gonna change it around, then twist it around. If you want to wire it so that you can change things around at a later date, then just do as I've done on this occasion and just put the wire through. As long as your solder connection's fine, it's not going to make a difference. But on things like the jack, well, there's no room for error really, is there? Without the jack, it's not going to work at all. So give it a nice tin, thread your wire through, and then because you've tinned it, it'll be a nice, easy solder connection. And then do exactly the same with the yellow wire. So we're going to twist that through. Wrap it round, and again solder that in place. There you go, push your cloth back down. This is recommended with the wiring kit. You do get some rubber tubing. Just snip 3/4 of an inch or an inch off or so, and thread that down the cloth and cover the whole thing. Just cover that joint, simply because if these wires come into contact with any shielding equipment, copper tape for example that you might be using, it will short. So you just cover the terminals and makes your whole thing a lot more durable. That's not going down. There you go. And then use a heat gun or a cigarette lighter, not encouraging smoking, and just shrink that down. All good. And then, not needed, but you might as well keep the two wires together as much as you can. Put another bit of tubing down the middle there. That noise, by the way, that whirring, is the little fan just to blow the solder fumes away from the area. Right, so let's connect the jack. So you have to gauge your distance. Well, obviously if you've got your guitar in front of you, you can work out the exact distance. So cut your wires to length. Right, so your yellow or the cream or whatever it is gets soldered to the middle terminal of the volume. That's the output lug. And the ground, the black gets grounded against either of the pots, so wherever you fancy it, to be honest. So we'll do the live first. Push your cloth back, thread it through, and solder that into place. Give it a snip. And the ground, doesn't matter where you ground it, to be honest, but I tend to do it on the tone pot as it's the nearest to where the jack goes anyway. So do it on the side or on the top there. I tend to do it on the top, so I'm just going to lift that out of the way. Cut my wire to size. Push back the cloth. Tin the ground wire. Just very briefly, just put a bit of tin on them. Tin the CGS pot where you're going to put it, so I'm going to put it here. Just going to heat the area, flow in my solder. All good. I'm going to put the ground wire in place. I'm going to flow in a tiny bit more. That remelts everything. And I'm just going to hold that down when I remove my soldering iron. There you go. Right guys, that's the harness done. How to wire a 4-way harness. So to be honest, it's exactly the same as a 3-way telly. All the jack, the capacitor, the controls, they're all the same. It's just the switch that actually changes. So that's that done. Now we're going to modify the neck pickup and show you how that gets connected to this circuit. So here's my neck pickup. It's a standard telly neck pickup, single coil. It's got a metal cover there, which is chrome, I think. So basically, for the 4-way telly mod, you need to basically have 3 wires coming out from the pickup, and here we only have 2. And basically what that entails is, if I turn this over, you can see, just to show you what's going on underneath, you've got your 2 wires coming here. Cream is the hot wire, or the live wire, black is the ground. So you can see your pickup's obviously got the 2 wires coming from the coils, and they come underneath here. This little jumper wire here is what grounds the pickup, the metal cover, the casing. So these tabs here, there's a 3rd tab just here which secures the case from this side, and then that is then grounded by connecting it to the ground of the pickup. And obviously when you ground the pickup to the rest of your circuit into the bridge, the whole thing's grounded. But to do the 4-way mod, you need to actually ground the casing separately, because your ground wire from the pickup, the original ground wire, is actually going to be going to your 4-way switch, which is what puts the pickups in series together. So the first thing we're going to do, we're just going to snip this wire here, this jumper wire, snip it, it's not needed. And I'm just going to use the heat from the soldering iron to remove the wire from the rest of the pickup. There we go. And now basically you need to add a 3rd wire coming from that metal tab of the casing of the pickup cover. So we're gonna we're gonna use yellow. We're gonna add a 3rd wire, basically a 2nd ground. So your pickup ground and your guitar, the pickup cover ground, are 2 separate wires. So we're just going to, I'm using yellow cloth wire, just so I can easily identify them. I'm going to tin my wire first. Oh, excuse me. There we go. And I'm going to put this yellow wire, it's going to be hopefully secured. I say hopefully because soldering onto pickup cases coverings really isn't that easy. So if you've got an adjustable temperature soldering iron, now's the time to crank it up. I've literally whacked mine up to the top because it does require a fair amount of heat. I'm going to flow in my solder. I'm going to let that flow all over the metal tab. There you go. Push that cloth back down. Right. So now we have 3 wires coming from the pickup. So I've got the cream is the main, the live wire, the black is the actual pickup ground, and the yellow that you literally just added is the metal casing ground. So just to show you how that actually ties into the rest of the circuit, I'm just going to raise the camera a tiny bit to give you a bit of a bird's eye view. Right then, so the cream wire can you pick up? This is the main live wire. It's going to go to terminal 6 on your switch, which is this one. The black wire, so the main pickup ground, is going to terminal 5, so that's this one here at the bottom. And the yellow wire that you've literally just added, you ground separately to the back of the pot casing, with the bridge pickup ground, the ground for the bridge, anything else you need grounded. So there you go. That's how to do a 4-wire Telecaster and how to modify the neck pickup if it's required. If you have any questions or comments, or of course critiques, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Get in touch, send us an email, drop us a message. Any requests for future videos. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you soon.